Okay, third hour coming at you one more time with homework 43. We've got these negative values inside our square root sign. They're not supposed to be there. So we can proceed with these on this assignment by dealing with some I values, complex numbers, imaginary numbers. So whenever you have this square root sign with a negative inside there, you can take this negative sign and represent it as an I value. So the negative inside the square root becomes an I value outside of the square root. Now how that works for the rest of the problem is pretty straightforward. Square root of 81, that's 9, I times 9. You would just write that number first, I second, 9I. So a negative sign inside the square root gets represented as an I value on the outside. So these are all the steps. You guys aren't going to show the steps. So if you have like 13, like 169, like you know the square root of 169 is 13. This negative, you know, is going to become an I. So most of you guys are just going to go straight to 13I. So here's the steps. Here's what I know you guys are going to do. Okay, I values, the theme of this homework 43. There's 1 and 2. Let's do 3. Let's say it doesn't break. It's not an easy one. You got to break it down. So we know how to do this already. We grab the 72. As soon as we see this on the inside, we can write it with an I value outside of the square root. So the negative on the inside immediately becomes an I value, square root of 72. Take 72, we're good at this. 8 times 9, 4 times 2, 3 times 3. So you take your 72, break it down, and you got a bunch of 2, 2, 2, 3, 3. So I, 72 becomes 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, bam, 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 bam. And we know what we're hunting. We're trying to find any pairs of numbers. Like here is one pair of 2s, here is one pair of 3s. Get them to the outside. And we know this. Anything written 2 times on the inside, you only write it 1 time on the outside. So this will be a 2 and a 3 and an I. Kind of looks like that. Then you got to clean up the mess. The 2 times the 3. So it becomes 6I square roots of 2. All right. So negative on the inside of the square root, immediately write it as an I. Take the 72, factor tree it, break it down. This we're good at. 1, 2, 3 of our 7 examples in the books. Okay, number 4. All right, big important rule right here, number 4. Anytime you have I squared, I to the second power, I squared always equals -1. I squared equals -1. I squared, -1. I squared, -1. So for the rest of your life, I squared, -1, we got this. I squared, -1. So we need to know that fact when we're doing number 5. Let's say we've got a -4 times a -25. All right, here's the door in these. You've got a negative inside, you got a negative inside. Here's the rules. You make those I's first. Before you do anything else, make them I's. So this is I squared to 4 times I squared to 25. So before you do anything else, this negative becomes an I. This negative becomes an I. Now you're multiplying. So in multiplying, you take the outsides, multiply them together, insides, multiply them together. What's that look like? So it looks like this. So the I values are on the outsides, they get multiplied. The 4 and the 25 are on the insides, they get multiplied. All right, I times I squared, 4 times 25, 100. Now where things get pretty nice, because we know what I squared is. For the rest of our life, I squared negative 1. I squared negative 1. So this, I squared negative 1. And we know the square root of 100. The square root of 100 is 10. And so for us to finish this, negative 1 times 10, whoops, negative 10. Ha ha ha. Okay, again, make sure when you start this problem, these negative signs become i's first. Don't do anything else until you change negatives into i's. And then you got this. Let's do one more like this. Let's do one more like this. Okay. 6. What do we got for 6 here? 48 and 3. So negative 48 is negative 3. Okay, we got a couple square roots. First thing you do is you change those negative signs, you change those into i's. So negative and negative becomes I square roots of 48 times I square roots of 3. So those negative signs inside the square root, boom, becomes an I on the outside. Boom, becomes an I on the outside. Now, multiplying is awesome. We take the guys on the outsides, multiply them together. Take the guys on the insides, multiply those together. So we are in shape, outsides and insides ready to go. I times I. There's I squared. 48 times 3. You're like 144, and you're just smiling now. Like, I know what's happening here. I squared, boom, 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 boom. I squared becomes negative 1. The square root of 144 is 12. And then negative 1 times 12, negative 12. You're like, dun, dun, dun. That is 6 of the 7 examples. Let's do this last one. All right, let's throw a fraction into this last one, number 7. Negative 24. Okay. All right, so here we go. You've got a square root up top, you've got a square root on bottom. There's a rule you can do with square roots, where if you've got one top, one bottom, you can change this into a great big tall square root. And it kind of looks like that. You're like, oh, that's pretty tricky. And the reason I did that is I know what 24 divided by 6 is. Like, I know this. It's 4. So this becomes a square root, but now it's just negative 4. You're like, aha. Now from here, you guys are thinking, oh, it's an I, square root of 4 is 2, it's 2I. If you don't see that, just do the steps. Negative on the inside, immediately make that an I value. So this negative underneath becomes the I value. And then we know the square root of 4. Square root of 4 is 2. So this is an I times 2, but you don't put the I first. You always put the number first and then the I. Boom, 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 2I. So a great problem for us to finish on. Take that negative on the inside, make it an I on the outside. Square root of 4 is 2, 2I. All right, last homework assignment, get busy.